All right, Fern, we're back. We are still in quarantine. Is it a quarantine? Is it a lockdown? Is it isolation?
It's bullshit. That's what I've labeled it.
So what you're
Uh,
trying to tell us is your attitude has not changed over the last couple of days.
no, it's probably getting more and more sour as the days go on and my fitness goes down and my the walls of my business are still empty.
So it's changed, but for the worse.
For the worse. Yeah, this is on a quick decline.
Are you training right now? Are you working out?
I mean, yeah, but very sporadically and probably with very little intensity. Like I would say
What's
like a 3 day training week would be a win for me.
what would you say are some pieces of advice, some tips? Because like you, there's plenty of demotivated people right now. Those that are like myself and having to train in your extra bedroom. There's just something about the purposefulness of getting in your car, driving to the
Hmm.
gym, all that
Yeah,
good stuff.
going to
Eh,
a class where there's a coach, where there's other people watching me.
Yeah, I mean everything about the community of CrossFit. So what are some tips you might have for those like myself working out at home? And I'm asking selfishly as well. And I've got a couple that have been working for me, but what would you say?
Simple is best. Which I mean, we could apply that to so many aspects of life, but for me personally, the second anything becomes complex, like I just kind of don't have the bandwidth for it right now. So then it just goes out the window. Like, it needs to be like the best workout for me could be just if somebody was like, I need you to walk over to that empty space over there on the floor. I need you to fall down and get up for 5 minutes. I'm like, that's it. I could do that. No thinking, no warm up. So that's the other thing. No warm up
That's
for
actually
me.
one of my tricks.
No warm up. It cannot be anything that requires a band, a mobility, like for me to get my joints ready. If I can't just walk in, not even tie my shoes and go, it's probably not happening.
Yeah, that was the first thing I noticed with this is I've never been a fan of warming up, but if there's a class going on and I can joke around with other people, it'll happen. Or at a minimum, I'll hop on an assault bike or a rower. I have neither of those. Although we do have a Peloton bike now. Roz got a Peloton bike. So I'm gonna take a Peloton class today, see how that goes.
Seems like a solid financial decision in the
They
midst of global economic crisis.
well, as you know, sometimes you have to balance financial decisions with the happiness of your wife. But
Does that
they're
scale
actually
ever go in the right direction for
yeah,
that matter?
no, I mean, Roz is very much in line with my financial beliefs, which is save as much as you can. But
Put as much money in
Peloton
those shoe boxes as possible.
under my mattress that I'm sitting on right now, um, Peloton
I
is
feel
running
like
some
I
great
learned a lot
deals.
about you by watching the Amazon special, The Marvelous Miss Maisel.
You just that's I'm the only Jewish person you know. That's why. My parents, I've never watched that. My parents watch it. Roz watches it. I can't watch that stuff.
I have no idea how accurate that is in any sense, but when I watch it, I think about you.
Well, thank you. So, one thing I learned, like I was saying, is I have no desire to warm up. And that's not unusual, but now it's even lesser. So, almost every one of my workouts begins with some sort of body weight movement or some tricks that I've done is say I have three kettlebells, a 35, a 55, and a 70. I'll do a workout that maybe rotates which bell you're using. So the first round can be the
Yeah,
lightest bell, and then the second round, so it's just three, two, one,
like
go. I'm in that room and I'm moving.
what I do the other day. I was literally on my way out of the gym. It was probably like 5:36 p.m. or something like that, and I hadn't worked out, and I didn't want to, but I knew I was going to be a little bit more grumpy about not doing it. So I just grabbed the remote, started the clock for something to the tune of 10 minutes, and I think I did like 10, 10, 10, just air squats, push-ups, and strict pull-ups.
Yeah, I mean, and
And
simple,
I
short.
I don't know how many rounds I get. Like it doesn't even matter. Yeah, I wanted something that wasn't going to allow me to go super fast because of the strict pull-ups is going to slow me down. And it was fine. I was like, I'm glad I did that. Like it wasn't great. I didn't do anything spectacular. It was probably horrible, but I did it. So that's the thing, right? It's like at some point, it's just like getting it done is all that matters, not necessarily the quality of what you got done.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing I've really been trying to preach and reiterate to people. It's like I don't think we realize how much stress we have. I mean, we realize how much stress Fern has because he makes it very clear. But
It's,
for
it's at
those
a
of us
it's at an
that,
all-time high right now.
maybe don't have a brick and mortar and a small business to worry about, we still have some stress. I mean, Roz and I were talking at dinner last night. It's like I forget almost what it was like to be out in the real world. I mean, you're going to the box every day, social distancing, doing all that, but I haven't left my house in 3 days. Like literally have not left my house. And I'm just like, what's it gonna be like again? So I think there's a little bit of stress there. I didn't sleep well. I think, your mind wanders, and training and nutrition also when it comes to like fasting is a stress on your body. And just because we equate it to a good stress does not mean it's always good. And when you're struggling, adding more to the plate is not necessarily the best move.
Yeah, and for the record, a lot of my stress, some of it is external. Obviously, everything that revolves around the business being shut down, that's all external. There's nothing I can do about that. But some of the other stress for me is quasi self-induced. We're revamping a ton of things. Or like we talked about this in previous episodes, where I'm trying to use this as I prefer to live my life like this. If I'm going to go through some period of time that's going to be painful, right? So if you're just like, hey, if you have two options. You can have a level 2 bout of pain for 12 months, or for 1 month, you can have level 48 pain. I will opt for 1 month of level 48 every single time.
Yeah, I
So that's
think.
currently what I'm going through right now, is just like I'm revamping a ton of different things, like websites, going through all of our processes and procedures, like redoing the trainer handbook, like all these things that I have no desire to do, like looking at all the SEO on our website. I'm like, this fucking makes me want to punch small children, but it needs to get done, because on the back end, I'll be much happier. Like we'll have made a lot of headway in a very short amount of time. But while I'm in it, it feels like I'm, crawling on my hands and knees and grapple.
Well, and this is not what this podcast is about right now. But what I would encourage you to do, and mostly because I'm doing none of that right now, I'm just kind of reading a lot and studying, is
And why don't
folk.
you ever have any time? Every time I text you, you're like, I'm busy.
I hop on calls. I'm downplaying a little bit of what's going on.
You're that guy. You're that
Plus,
guy. You're the guy
you
in the office. If you were in an office, if you worked a normal 9 to 5, Jay would always have a folder in his hand, and he would be walking briskly somewhere at all times. And he'd be like, hey, Jay, I need to talk to you. Like, I'm busy right now. And then go off somewhere. But nobody would actually have any idea what Jay did in the office. You're that guy.
I've never had an office job, so I agree with
It's,
you.
it's clever. I will give you that. Kudos to you, my friend.
But point being, I would encourage you to take a step back, just evaluate some of the things you're working on, determine are they essential to the growth of the business, and maybe not have such a strong time frame on it. Maybe map it out so over the next. I know you're not listening to me about this, but just
No,
in
I am
case
listening
anyone.
to you. I'm
And
going through it in my mind. I'm like, well, I
yeah,
was going through it earlier in my mind. I was like, I'm doing this because I kind of want to, but I'm not going to make any headway on this particular thing today. So what I've done is I've just banged my head against the wall for 3 hours. And now I'm getting frustrated that I've made no headway on this thing that I wasn't going to make any headway on anyway.
well, and being a former box owner, I know, and I spoke to our good friend Katie Powell about this, who is a recent box owner here in Colorado as well. And it's like there's always more to do.
For
And I think
sure.
for me, my biggest stress to this day is I'll have a to-do list, and it's like I need to remember, just because it's a to-do list doesn't mean it's a 24-hour to-do list. And one thing I've gotten better at is on these bigger projects, kind of chunking them down. So even if you only spend 5 minutes on it, you're like, okay, I made some progress on my SEO or some progress on this employee handbook. Because whether it's 15, 30, or 45 days, like you said, you're not going to finish. You're going to still have more to do after. And then even if you finished everything on day 45, you're going to have a whole new to-do list on day 46.
I'll have a whole new, like, I'll be like, oh, who am I going to hire when we reopen? Because we're going to have this mass influx, all that crap. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the other thing that I've been trying to do, and I don't know if I've been unsuccessful at it because, so I've been sleeping pretty well lately, and I can't figure out if that is because my stress levels are high, that I'm so exhausted at the end of the day that my body has no choice but to just go to sleep, you know? But I've been having trouble. Typically, I don't have any problems getting up at like 5. If I'm like, hey, I need to get some stuff done, I'll get up at 5. I haven't been able to do that lately, and I don't know why.
It could, yeah, it could be either. I mean, it's hard to say. It could be you're overstressed or you're exhausted, or maybe you're not as stressed, or maybe something you typically do when the box is open, like coach really late, kind of keeps your, you know, brain going. So you're actually shutting down a little earlier.
I
You
don't
want to
know.
lay down on the couch behind you? We can figure this out.
Need some downtime from the king of downtime.
By the way, all those social media clips we're putting up on best hour of their day Instagram make me laugh every time.
They're great. I can't wait until we can not social distance and do season 2.
Where should we go for season 2? If you had to take your pick, where would it be?
Anywhere. It doesn't even matter at this point. As long as we could see other human beings, it'll be fine.
All right, I think we do Boulder then. I think you come out here. We
Of
got a
course, you
nice.
would choose somewhere that doesn't require you to go anywhere.
Well, there's that, but also I just think there's a great. It's a very different climate and demographic than Raleigh. So I think
I was going to say
it'll be
either
cool.
there or Texas.
I would do that. There's so many. I mean, in Texas, we got to say like where, Houston, Dallas, but yeah, certainly there's a lot of places we can go to.
There's a couple of boxes in Dallas that we could bounce around at that are pretty unique. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, and Austin would be another place.
yeah,
So going back to those tips, I like the idea of minimal warm up, and then the other thing I just try to do is set a clock. I'm doing more AMRAPs, like, and I'm trying to go a little longer because the intensity, like you said, is down. So I figure, if you look at intensity, force, distance, time, my time is going to be higher. So that might allow me to generate a little more intensity than these short workouts that I'm not going to do anything with. And
mm-hmm.
and just kind of let my head go. I don't keep track of rounds if I'm doing AMRAPs, or I just, it's like a
No,
moving meditation.
yeah, and
So
I typically I'm not even getting out of breath for a lot of them. I'm just kind of moving at a very comfortable pace. So
and the reason I am continuing to train is because we don't know what's going to happen with the 2020 games, and I'm thinking I might get the call.
well, we do know it's going to happen. Morning Chalk Up sent an email out this morning that says it's going down. All options are being laid out on the table, which means there's potentially a shot that you will get an invite to spectate.
Yeah, I mean, I know Dave Castro's a big fan of the show. If he's listening and he needs someone, to come to Madison, I'm in. I'm in. If you're ready, if you're
Is this your year to demo from your living room? Like demo team will be social distance from the living room.
Well, that's an interesting point. I saw Morning Chalk Up's email, and I saw their Instagram post, and they're kind of coming at CrossFit in a harsh way. Well, simply because they're saying, and this is how I felt also about the UFC. I don't know if you followed what was going on with the UFC, but they were,
They're going to a private island.
well, even and prior to that, they were supposed to have a very big fight on this coming weekend. Khabib and Tony Ferguson, which is like the fifth
Yeah.
time they've scheduled. Dana White was like, "We are making this happen." And while I would have paid for the fight, I would have bought the pay-per-view. The truth is, I was like, "Is this really smart? Is this, we're leaders, in this world, and Dana White certainly is when it comes to like, hey, this is what we're doing, this million or billion dollar company." I was like, this probably isn't a good precedent to set. What do you think the CrossFit Games is going to do?
There's so many questions that are just really hard to answer because nobody really understands what the timetable looks like. And if you just think about the vast majority of participants or athletes, just due to the nature of the structure of the games at this point, I'm pretty sure live outside of the continental United States. I don't know if that's, well, yeah, it has to be accurate at this point because of the new. So travel in and of itself, basically at this point, is going to be a problem.
And travel has always been a problem. There's been years where athletes struggle to get visas. We saw that last year with all the country winners. I mean, the challenges, like you just said, no one knows. The games were going to be, if I'm accurate,
August.
first week of August. So
Yeah.
it's mid-April now. So May, June, July. So we have 3.5 months.
And let's assume nobody gets open before May.
Okay, so May 1st, things start to roll out. And that's Freddie Camacho, who's been on the show, posted something
May,
in the
June, July. So you have 90 days.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, Freddie Camacho posted something in the affiliate owners group. I think it was Israel, the country he referenced. Speaking
Mm-hmm.
of Jewish people doing it right, they had a slow rollout of the businesses that can reopen, and they would
Yeah.
evaluate 2 weeks to see how that was going. And most people believe, gyms will be at that level 4, which is the last one to open.
So dumb. But
So
whatever.
assuming that's accurate, we're talking another 6 to 8 weeks there. Now, the other piece of this puzzle is who's qualifying, because the sanctionals were stopped.
I would imagine everything has to move to. So there's a go no go date for whatever we're going to do. Decision has to be made by X date. And we're just speculating at this point, but from what I know about planning in general, there is a drop dead date where we have to get this idea rolled out so that we can sift through. We have enough time to determine who the athletes are so that they can get their spot, punch their ticket, and get to the games. And typically we know who all of those are by May. So at this point,
Well,
we're kind of.
Do we know that? I mean, this is the first year the Open is being run this way, and the sanctional. This is the
kind of sort of. I mean, like last year was a tweener year. So I mean, there were sanctionals from last year, and they had the country championships. But like all of the national champions from the Open and the majority of the sanctionals were all done at some point in May. So you have 2 months where there's no additional names being dropped in the hat unless it was a one-off invite, right? So
well, and something to consider from that perspective also is, athletes need to be training and preparing. That's why those 2 months are probably there, right? Athletes are resting, recovering, maybe doing some periodization.
I mean, yes and no, but I think primarily it's for planning purposes.
Right, and they have to then book tickets, book a hotel, or an Airbnb, get their coaches tickets. There's a lot that goes on.
So I think, I mean, if you look at that timetable, and now you look at really you're trying to open up. I mean, so we already had the Open, right? So that happened. You've had how many? We've had like a handful of sanctionals. I think there was 27 roughly that were supposed to funnel athletes to the games. Maybe 10. I haven't looked at the numbers, but like not a lot of them have
Yeah,
been
there's a
executed on.
few early in the year, or even maybe late last year.
So my
Dubai
point with all of
happened,
this,
and again,
yeah, Argentina, so there's a drop dead date where they have to make a decision like this is how we're going to filter the field. And that has to be coming pretty quick because, within the next 2 weeks, you're on a pretty hard 90-day window. Now, there could be some things that shift here because typically that hard date of first week of August, I'm pretty sure had a lot to do with the reopening of school at Madison, which if that's shifted, there may be a little wiggle room in there with moving right on the calendar. Again, this is all speculation. I have no idea. But the window's getting pretty tight, and you're probably going to be looking at something that looks like a virtual qualifier, which there's going to be a lot of hemming and hawing about as far as like, was it legit? Was it not? And I don't know, maybe let me be the first to go on record saying like, it'll sort itself out. The fittest people are going to win. So maybe don't freak out about it, but I mean, there's a lot of questions. I don't envy the people in those positions that have to make those decisions and figure that out.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on this and say with certainty that the games will be online.
The actual games.
Yeah, you're referring to the feeder. I'm talking about the games.
Ooh.
I don't think there's any way unless they're able to push back to September, maybe October, right? Which then, of course, affects the 2021 season.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way to do this in person. I mean, you got
Well, there's
how
probably
many
a way, but
countries?
there's probably has to be some sort of, there's probably, I'm sure there's some cost analysis on what it, like, if we do this in person, what does it look like? You're not going to get any spectators,
Right. So
very little.
but you're also not going to incur the cost of the arena.
I mean, not it at the very minimum, not what they were going to do. You know, they don't need all of that. You know, now
I'm
this brings
thinking,
up some interesting things, right? Because now we all know that because it's virtual, that really can limit the type of events. Not everybody has access to the same equipment. You know, what are we doing with regard to monostructural events? You know, how do
no,
you get video verification of things like that?
oh, I don't have all the solutions. I have a phone call with Dave Castro later today. He's asking for my advice. No, but I mean, I'm thinking they'll do. Here's if I really had to lay it out. You're putting the pressure on me. It's April. We're recording this on April 14th. They have to make a decision soon, one way or the other. I mean, look, the Olympics, which is a little bit bigger than the games, of course, bringing in countries, and this, I believe it was in Tokyo this year, so there's all of that going on. But I'd say they're going to decide that it's going to go online, which will give them maybe a month to do some sort of qualifier to fill the back spots. And maybe they allow countries from the countries are done from the open, so that's set,
Yeah,
right?
those people have been identified.
So we
It's
got
all it's the rest of the field. I mean, let's put it this way. It's what they are really trying to filter for is the typical top 50 athletes. Like you still have athletes that still are in the mix that could be typically who you would see on day 2
right.
or 3.
And I think if you have to go by how many spots you were going to allow had things ran the way they were supposed to.
And
So
that might change. They might just change how many spots are available. I mean, it
they
wouldn't be
might, but
weird.
I think they need to allow the athletes the opportunity because for so many of them, this is their career, this is their job. They need to at
Yeah,
least
yeah.
be given the opportunity to get there. And not to mention, if they didn't do that, there would be a disproportionate number of people coming from other countries, which we learned last year they were not the fittest.
Which, by the way, nobody was shocked about.
No,
And
not a big deal. I mean, I was
yeah,
surprised, to be honest. Like, I didn't pay close enough attention to judge that first event, and I had the fittest from India, and he didn't get out of the first round. I was surprised.
I mean, I wasn't. It's just
Yeah,
not
I
as prevalent
mean,
in a lot of those places. But that is how you get it to grow. That's how you increase the desire and the training and all of those things. So 2-3 years of that, and you'll see a dramatic uptick in the performance of people that are coming from those places. That'll sort
100%.
itself out. Yeah.
The people that were there last year are coming back stronger and fitter this year. But my point is, we can't have 100 countries represented, but only the 20 from the open and a handful from the sanctionals, right? So
Correct.
we need to get more of the fittest of the fit involved, which I think they'll do another, sanctional qualifier, if you will. Maybe the sanctionals that didn't run will each host an event type of thing, and it'll last a couple of weeks. And then I think if I were really laying this out, I would put the dates out there. I would, obviously a very strict and very specific email. Hopefully by this time, there's at least a little less rules on social distancing. And I would say, hey, every athlete, this is your list of equipment that you must have. Dave will work something out probably with Bill from Rogue to make sure those athletes have the ability to get it. And you need to have some sort of qualified judge, whatever that means. If that means, they have to go to places where seminar staff lives, potentially, right? So like CrossFit Roots,
Which
for
is a decent,
example.
yeah, which is a decent, you have a decent pool of people to get to, that most of which I would imagine could probably is within driving distance.
Yeah, I mean, in the United States especially, I'm not sure about some of the smaller countries, but for example, if CrossFit Roots hosted a workout, there's 5 to 7 seminar staff here, 10 to 12 that are driving, within 5 hours of driving distance. I'm sure we can run heats here.
Yeah, I mean, if you were lived on the East Coast, I don't think you'd have to drive. I think the max you would have to drive in any direction before you hit somebody that could judge that wears a red shirt is probably max 3 hours.
Yeah. And even if they didn't do that, but maybe they paid us to go places, or maybe, the games athletes have to get a level 1 trainer, someone that's just attended their level
Yeah.
1 and passed the test, plus film it. I mean, is there any difference?
Filming is a must.
Oh yeah, of
There
course.
has to be some sort of video verification of
And
that.
and you know what?
That's a
And
must.
maybe in addition to filming, maybe they're live, so maybe fans can hop on Zoom, right, and watch their favorite athletes do it. So maybe CrossFit can make money by charging. Maybe they can have a fee that it costs to watch the best athletes compete. That's the spectator fee. But I think, what would you say would be the obstacle there? I mean, really, is it any different doing that for the games than it is for the Open?
I think the obstacle is not what most people think it is, which is verification of. I think that's very solvable. I think probably the big obstacle is you're limited with regard to the scope of the tests that you can give to athletes in a lot of scenarios, because they're not centrally geographically, like they're not geographically located together. The equipment thing could be a problem. I mean, if you think about, yeah, I'm sure Rogue could do that, but that is getting equipment to 300 athletes that's all the same. Let's just say they all had a package, right? Like a pallet. You get your 350 pallets of games gear that shows up throughout the world, And for the record, I have zero doubt that Rogue could deliver on that before lunchtime.
Yeah, and you would
The
obviously
day
keep
that,
it
yeah.
simple. You wouldn't be sending worms out to everybody. But
Well, that's it. So there's an entirely different question, right? The teams, we haven't even talked about that. That's a
no,
whole nother ball of
well,
wax.
I'll give you my opinion on that. But I mean, I guess my question is, what's the difference between the Open and the games, right? Everyone does the Open, and we assume it's 95 pounds. We assume,
The scope of the test is the difference. The open relative to the games and the test is a very narrow window. We could all, with pretty high accuracy, guess what we're going to see over the course of that 5 weeks, like with very high accuracy. The games is totally different. Like nobody ever knows what you're going to see at the games.
but let's take a look at last year then. There's we judged 14, 15 events in total, maybe?
Something like that, I think.
How many of those were not measurable, observable, and repeatable at a box?
The swim for sure.
Right. So we're going to obviously look, like you said earlier, at monostructural stuff, right? Swimming and running potentially out, but you have a bike, you have a assault bike, you have potentially an air runner if they had to, right? You have a rower.
Yeah, so the running gets a little dicey.
Well, the running
right?
has to be out. You can't. That would be a challenge, I would say.
Unless it's on an air runner, and you'd have to predetermine that it had to be an air runner or a true form or something like that.
Or a track.
Yeah, I mean you could, but then it's like, is it track accurate? Is it 400? Is it 200? Does that give people an advantage? It's just, there's all sorts of weird steps
So
that people would have beef with. So the
my
running
question would be
it
then,
gets difficult. And then the question is, like, is it a legit test if there's no running involved?
right. Well, it's certainly we have to determine, is it a legit test? And then my question would be, what's more important, the legitimacy of this test or having the games? And let's also be clear, it's not an illegitimate test just because some of those movements aren't involved, but it certainly limits the modalities.
Correct. If I was to if I was to guess what Dave Castro would say, I think he would go with the legitimacy of the test.
So you think he would not hold the games?
I'm not saying he would not hold the games, but
because let's be clear, the games
he's got a problem on his hands. I'll tell you that.
But the games have been announced, correct? Like
they've
said they're happening.
That email said it was happening. To what extent it's happening, I don't know.
Well, then my opinion would be Dave has to be basic. You have to realize we don't know what's going to happen. And if we're committing to running the games, there's a chance that the test is different this year.
by its very nature, it's probably not be, it's not ideal. So it is what it is.
I'm just saying
Is there an asterisk? Is there an asterisk next to the 2020 winner because it wasn't live in person? I don't
I
know.
don't know. Isn't that like the whole benefit of CrossFit? Like anything's available. Like, like you said, do you think anything would happen by doing it online that Frazier doesn't win? No, and with that being said,
No,
I
no,
don't follow
no.
the best
Based
of
on
the
the fact that
best.
he's no based, no, yeah, no. Based on the fact that I think he's fitter, but the very nature of having people do it on their own, it just invites controversy. Like there will be controversy in that scenario. So like, how do you go about trying to mitigate that? But there will absolutely be controversy. Like there is no avoiding it at this point.
Yeah, and my only point is whoever's making the final decision, be it Dave, Coach Glassman, Nicole Carroll, I don't know. But the point being, if they are resigned to the fact that it is definitely happening, they know that there's a chance it's going to be very different this year because no one knows, hey, we can all be released from this quarantine, and then 2 weeks later they say, oh, we made a mistake, quarantine again. So
Yeah,
they have
that's
that.
another thing. And then the quarantines are different in different places. So there might be athletes who with the games going on, but they still can't leave their
Get to the
house.
gym, right? Yeah. So, I mean, they have to know that. And obviously, if an athlete has to pull out because of that, they have to. But I just think chances are it's going to be online. I don't think we're going to be ready for mass gatherings. They're already talking about the NFL playing to empty stadiums. If the NFL is playing empty stadiums, I don't think CrossFit's going to Madison.
Probably not. You could probably do it on the cheap though. You could probably go somewhere else. They could do something that was spectator free and go and spend way less money if they were going to do it in person.
Yeah, and
Like I
that is,
said, that's a pickle, man. I don't really know how you do that. I do know this. Like, there's a whole subset of people that are going to be unhappy about it, and it's just like, what? I mean, like, it
yeah,
is what it
but
is. Deal with it.
yeah, and that's kind of
Coronavirus.
my point about it's going to be different. It's a fair competition across the board, so there's nothing to be upset about. Obviously, you're upset because you don't get to travel to Madison, you don't get to compete in front of your friends and your family, but you can't be upset about it, the fairness of it, because everyone's dealing with the same thing.
Yeah. So correct. It's just it sucks. I don't know really how else to say it. It's just you know.
So like, and I agree with you. It's something I hadn't considered is maybe they go to Madison, but they don't do it. It's spectator free. That's just all video. They could have that. There's still the issue of other countries traveling in, but you know something may be better than nothing. And it's not like we can say this is an American sport. I mean, the best females, not from America. To some of the top 10 from the men are
And hasn't been from America in like
right.
10 years.
Yeah, so they need to make sure that all countries are available. This is not a one country sport. For teams, I think it's going to be much of the same, just online. And if they're all individual events, they're individual events where you know the culmination of a team score
The
is what.
score, yeah. Yeah.
So if it's
Yeah, I don't
total
disagree. I don't
time or total reps for the team.
yeah, I don't disagree with you on that either. I think it adds a whole nother layer of complexity with regard to executing the event. So you have to start thinking about all sorts of weird stuff that you didn't think about before, which is submissions. What if somebody has internet issues? Like what's the rules there? Now, fortunately, we have some experience here. Like this is kind of the old. Like we have to go back a little bit back to the days of old of the sanctionals, where or the sectionals. Sorry, not sanctionals. The sectionals where like if you like where video submissions were required in some instances, and then people had issues, and then was the video doctored? How do we verify it's not doctored? What happens if you had issues uploading it? If it's a 45-minute video or something like that, you know. So that's the weird stuff you have to think about that you didn't have to think about when you're doing things live and in person. So,
Yeah, I mean,
the
sure
real
there's
question is, probably more along the lines of with all of these changes, Do you think you can make it?
Oh, I'll be there wherever it is. I'll be in my extra bedroom. I
You'll be there virtually.
I'll be there virtually. It'll be like the time in the Open where they had the average Joe doing the workout beside the games champions and the athletes. That'll be me. That's what they should do. The games is open to the world. Everyone can compete. It's no different than the Open. And
It's
then
just the Open.
yeah, I mean, and that way I can finally say, when they introduce us at weekend seminars, 2020 games competitor Jason Ackerman.
Get that. As long as they send me. Now here's the question: if you're first to submit, and at some point you're the leader, do you get a
Screenshot.
leader jersey? Do you get a leader jersey?
I should. I mean, Dave, if you're listening, send it to me now, size
I
small.
want that white leader jersey.
What? I haven't decided if I'm going to compete for Israel or the United States yet.
You don't carry dual citizenship, do you?
No, I don't, but
Oh,
that'd be
you have a way
cool.
better shot in Israel, though. Yeah.
First Israeli champion. But that is interesting. I think there's so much uncertainty when it comes to this. It's gonna be fun to figure out, just what happens.
Now that you say that, I probably agree with you. It's probably all going to be virtual. They're probably just going to forego all of the logistical headaches of doing it any other way. And it's just that, if you're going to do it, go all in on one thing, which is virtual, so that you can manage it, and the resources required to do it are pretty finite at that point. So,
And
if it's less than ideal, like, let's just cut your losses kind of deal. Is kind of the way I would start looking at it at some point.
and here's another thing. There's 20 of us judging. Maybe it's like, hey, you guys are judging again. They have to submit it, and rather than in the Open where they kind of just open it up to anyone's eyeballs, we have to sit there and watch everything. That's another potential.
Yeah, I do. Well, they already do that for a lot of the submissions for this, for the Open anyway, which to some degree it removes in my mind, that's harder because you're under a different level of scrutiny than real time. Like, for instance, when you and I are judging, we don't have the ability to go back and there's no instant replay. I can't go back and look at that rep to see if it was good or not. Like, I have to make that split decision, and we don't ever come back to it. Like, if I make the call or if I don't make the call, it's gone. We're not going to revisit it. We're in a video, you get to
Yeah.
I get to watch it as many times as I want to, and I'm like, he has yet to go below parallel, so this is a 0.
Yeah, I mean, and then it's even more on the athletes because there are times when we're judging, we're like, no rep, go deeper. If they
Yeah,
don't know that they're getting no repped over and over again, that can really, but the truth is we talk about this a lot. The best of the best move well. And I think they would just really make sure every rep counts. And they'd probably have someone there watching as well to make sure they're
sure.
hitting the reps.
Yeah,
So
but there's
yeah,
always one. There's always one. There's
there's
always
a good
one who's on
chance
riding the line.
there's a good chance I'm going to be a games athlete this year. I won't be judging.
The real downside of this, which we haven't talked about yet, is that we will not be in the documentary next year.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my residual check from Heber and Mars.
I mean, I had way more screen time than you did, so.
What was your favorite event to judge last year?
Probably the final event for a couple reasons. A, I was center lane, so I judged Frazier.
Which was the final? The standard?
Yeah, 30,
30,
and
30,
then
30?
muscle up. Was it 30, 30, 30? 30 muscle up?
Because it was Grace, Muscle Ups, Isabel or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I thought it was great just because the tensions were high, man. I mean, that event mattered from a standpoint of winning. And there were some mathematical probabilities that Frazier would not win. And in all of my years of judging, so I think that was number 6, him at least, judging him, that's the first time I've seen him really have to, I mean, like, after he won, like, he couldn't have enough energy to be excited. Like
You
he
you
was like he
yeah,
was
he
done.
really has to go to that place.
Yeah, and I watched him do it. Like you could see him physically and mentally going there in the midst of the workout. Like it wasn't like that was a lot. That was a lot for him. So that was cool from that standpoint. Um, I kind of agreed with Dave in the documentary that I thought Mary was cool.
I loved Mary. That was actually I have two favorite events. I love just watching the cleans because we didn't really do anything.
Except the tie break when we got to
Oh, we
watch
had that
was
one
it
tie break.
Noah and Saxon Panchik?
Yeah. We did
Yeah.
have the one tie break, but that was really it. So, that was fun because we just had a front row view of this great event and got to hang out and chat. But I liked Mary. It was a ton of reps. I thought it was a great test. I mean, it's a classic girl workout with two of the more challenging gymnastic movements and one really high rep of a basic movement. Like, and to see those athletes go at almost EMOM it, I mean, or more than that, that's pretty ridiculous.
No, more than that. Like who did I have? I had one of the females who went 22 rounds of strict handstand push-ups.
Yeah, I mean that's taking less than 2 seconds per rep for 20 minutes.
It was so, and this is where people are like, this is boring. And I'm like, not on the floor judging, it wasn't. I mean, it was so fast that I was just panic stricken for 20 minutes, like trying to keep up with the pace at which they're moving.
Well, and I liked it because it was fast, but it was long enough that you caught minor breaks where you almost got to, look around and almost take it in for a second, which on some of those more, the shorter workouts, the higher intensity ones, you don't get to do that. So it was kind of cool to be in the middle of it and see that. But yeah, it was nonstop counting for 20 minutes. And I mean, it makes our
Yeah,
job harder. I mean, we're judging 600 plus reps.
it's way harder from that standpoint because they're moving so fast. And that's what I don't think people understand. Like the rep count that you have to keep during that time frame. Like most people have never judged a workout like that, which is a 20-minute AMRAP of all body weight movements. If you've never done that before, you're like, oh, this is boring. And I'm like, no. Particularly with athletes that are not taking breaks.
Well,
Like
yeah,
their break is transition from one movement to the next and maybe put some chalk on their hands.
well, and I was going to say, like, to keep track of that many rounds, you have to remember that when they came off that pull-up bar to mark the score sheet, which you have to look down at, and
Yeah.
most of the time, by the time you look back up, you got to make sure you don't miss the next rep.
Yeah, back up on because when you break it down, I don't think people understand how fast they're moving. Meaning, like how there is no break for you to not pay attention, other than them walking back to like from the pull-up bar back to do handstand push-ups, and they just turn around and go right into their pistols. So
It's
at some point you're just like, oh my god, what round are we on? Like, oh my, like
but great example of a workout you could do in the online games,
100%.
right? You
It's
see a
amazing.
pull-up bar, whatever the rules they set for the handstand push-ups, a box or any, forearm distance, and
Was
then
there
you
any? Was
go.
there? Is there been a workout at the games that you didn't like from a judging standpoint?
Never from like this is a hard to judge. It might have just been like a lot of reps or who I was judging. The only thing that comes to mind are those ring handstand push-ups.
That's everybody goes on everybody's mind.
And not because it was like it was a little unclear at times what exactly we were looking for. So
Yeah,
and what was allowed. So I mean the range of motion isn't the hard part, and that could be, whether it's just shoulder below the elbow or full lockout. It's just we need to know exactly what it is. And that was the first time
yeah.
they did it, and we've not seen it again.
The only other one that, and even that is just, I wasn't super worried about that. It was just kind of like, figured out on the fly. The one that I was not super pumped about, and this had nothing to do with the programming, had it zero. It was just the nature of the way the workout was executed was chaos when there were no reps given to the athletes. Like we were the only ones that knew.
Oh, that was yeah.
That was hard from a standpoint is because from a judging standpoint, at least what I do it for the athletes, but I also do it for me. Like I count out loud. So I'm trying to communicate with them so that we're on the same page about what's happening. But inherently, it also helps me keep track of where I'm at. Because
Oh
if you're
yeah,
counting
big
in your,
time.
anybody who's ever counted in your head, that's just a terrible idea. If you're judging, you should probably count out loud in some way, shape, or form just to keep yourself on track. And that was very difficult because that was also a very high rep workout. Like it was well over 100. I forget what it was, but it was a lot. And I found myself like panicking that I had lost count at different points because I couldn't say like, no rep, you're on rep, whatever. Like the only thing we were allowed to tell them was, you're done, move on.
Well, the only good news about that is no one else knew if we had lost count.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, well, how many no reps do you give? Enough that they're done at this point.
Just move on.
Yeah,
Well,
I feel like you're done. But that was the only one that it was just like that one caught me off guard with regard to the difficulty level of keeping track because you weren't allowed to communicate like that.
yeah, there's a lot going on. I think people think it's easy. Judging is no joke, and it's going to be hard for me to judge myself this year when I'm competing at the games.
I'll judge you. Don't you
No,
worry.
I'd like a nicer judge than
And
you.
I can assure it will not be the best hour of your day if I'm your judge.
Well, Fern, I'm going to let you go. You have a lot of SOPs and other things to do, and I hope you work out today.
I'm going to work out today. I think I'm going to do 18.1 today.
Remind me what that was. Dumbbell
20
snatch?
minutes. It is dumbbell snatch. 20 minutes of 8, 10, 14, I think is the calories, I believe, on the ski erg. It's dumbbell snatch, toes to bar, and row, I believe.
Oh, that's the one we did together.
That's right. We did do that
Yeah.
together in Florida, South Side.
Yeah, Jacksonville.
Yeah,
That was 18? That wasn't 19?
Is 18.1.
Wow. Long time ago.
I know.
Yeah, that makes sense. About 2 years ago, because we had that intern who's now on staff there, Greg.
That's right.
It was me, you, and Todd did that workout.
And he beat us.
Yeah, he was fit.
At which point I told him, I was like, maybe you shouldn't beat us if you want to be on the team.
You might want to hold back a little bit.
Yeah.
If you want to work with
throttle
us.
Throttle back, Greg. Understand. Know your role.
Well, enjoy that. I might do something similar. That's a good idea. I like that little 20-minute AMRAP of some dumbbell snatches. I can do some sit-ups here and then maybe some burpees.
Yeah, it's just pretty mindless. That's why I'm probably going to do it. Something that just requires no
It was
thinking.
actually clean and jerk.
It was alternating hands, right?
Yeah,
yeah. I know it's a dumbbell. I don't remember what it was, but I know it's a dumbbell.
Cool. Well, let us know how you do. And for those listening, go check out our Instagram at Best Hour of Their Day with all of our new social media clips. Last week, some great guests. This week, we've got some more great guests coming at you. So still waiting on that 200th review. Head over to iTunes and leave us a review, please.
Yeah, listen, everybody. We know you don't have shit to do. So go to iTunes and give us the damn review.
Yeah, there's a disproportionate number of downloads to reviews. Meaning we get thousands of downloads, but have 100-something reviews. We're the other 900 people.
And for the record, Jay has no idea what disproportionate means.
I'm going to look that up right now. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day, and thanks again to our special guest. We appreciate all you guys do for us with Best Hour of Their Day when it comes to sharing our posts on Instagram, when it comes to subscribing to us on YouTube, when it comes to the constant feedback. We are grateful and we appreciate it. We are trying to build a community based on coaching development and becoming the best version of yourself. And it goes without saying that we couldn't do without all of you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Season 1 of Dropping In is out. We are getting tremendous feedback and we'd love for you to check it out. Leave us a comment on there. Head over to our Instagram. Give us a follow. Like our pictures. Feel free to share anything that resonates with you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback for us, please don't hesitate. Email us besthouroftheirday@gmail.com. Thanks again. Until the next episode, we hope you've had the best hour of your day.